And we are happy to have Debra Thorne with us today. Debra, yes. The wonderful Debra is the minister in residence of Beacon Unitarian in New Westminster, where she has served for 7 years. So we're really happy to have her here this morning. And I'd also like to give a special welcome to any newcomers or visitors who might be with us today. We really are glad that you're here. And if you'd like to learn more about our community, you can find an iPad in the front foyer where you can sign in with your contact information, and then we can follow up with any questions that you might have. And we also have Ariel, who is our connections coordinator, who is a master at answering questions about our congregation. So also anyone who is a greeter, wearing a greeter button, would be happy to chat with you. In this community, we celebrate people of all walks of life. So no matter how you make your living or how you experience the sacred, no matter who you are or who you love, we hope you feel welcome here. Now, please take a moment to set your cell phones to worship mode and let go of your cares and listen to today's prelude.
Thank you for your very warm welcome this morning. These are our opening words. We are arriving still. Each heart, each body, touched by hands and words. We begin to form into a community together. Individuals, some known, some unknown, some of us comfortable, some hesitant, some like the hummingbird ready to take flight, some like the owl, curious, some like the robin, hungry for a juicy experience. We are a community forming this morning out of our need for human connection. To know again that whatever has happened in the world this week and in our lives, we are strengthened, nurtured, and comforted by being together. Bring all of yourself to this time. Make this community all you need it to be. Bring your tenderness, bring your rough edges, bring your despair, bring your love, bring your questions, bring your knowledge. We need one another. This is our wisdom, and it is very good. This is our time for centering, and I invite you to join with me in this prayer for those beyond our walls. I call to you, collected hearts and minds, and to the spirit of life that moves through you, that moves through this room, that moves through all of life, this world that we call home. As we begin the month of December, we enter days that for some are filled with anticipation, the anticipation of delightful times with family and friends, times of generosity and of deeply felt gratitude. Spirit of life and love, we know that not everyone celebrates the return of the light this month. We recognize that many are lonely and alone, some struggling with addictions and loss. The opiate crisis will take more lives again this month, and others near and far will die from violence, famine, and disease. All we hold in our hearts. And we acknowledge our Alaskan neighbors who are cleaning up after the earthquake on Thursday. And we think of those who were impacted by the car accident on Highway 1 last night. And on a positive note, let us send our love and our respect to the Tahltan First Nation in northern BC, who lost most of their village to the Telegraph Creek wildfire this last summer, but who are making every effort to get their people home and housed this holiday season. This morning I light our candle of witness for that community, the Tahltan First Nation. May they be entirely successful in getting their village home for the holidays. Have I told you lately that I love you? Beautiful song, thank you so much. Love is in the air, and the stores are shouting to us that we should show that love by buying a lot of things. I grew up with a mother who loved to love us through the giving of gifts. And Christmas was her particular delightful orgy of giving. There was no doubt that she was generous. And as children, we of course loved to discover the piles of presents underneath the Christmas tree or spilling out over the top of the Christmas stockings. But as we matured into adults, and at times our finances were very limited, we sometimes felt her exuberant giving gifts as a burden, and we carried the weight of it. Well, taking the matter into our own hands, we responded creatively with new rituals. One year we picked a name out of a hat and only gave one present to one person. One year we gave only to charities. One year it was only very small presents. Another year it was only presents that we had made ourselves. And we were successful in our creative attempts to gift in different ways, but wholly unsuccessful in being able to shift our mother away from buying many gifts. She never accepted these new ways thought up to show our love for each other. Now, you may think us a little unfair or lacking in our ability to generously receive her giving, and I suppose there's some truth in that. But this story is not just my story. This is a story that I've heard very many times from different people, different families. A story of how one or more people in the family or in a collection of friends are uncomfortable in the amount that others give. It's especially challenging if there are economic disparities in a family or in a group of friends, when some people who have the means to give generously are oblivious to the uncomfortableness in others. Those who haven't the means themselves to give equally and end up spending more than they can afford, or feel that they can't participate, and so avoid parties and gatherings, because not showing up is at least saving face. So, this is the season of struggle and ambiguity, embarrassment, hiding, excess, generosity, love, and joy. But let's look at showing our love and our care and generosity, our gifting through a different lens. One that doesn't require money or shopping, one that is fundamentally democratic in that it is equal to all. Let's look at gifting through the lens of caregiving. In a show of hands or a nod, how many of you have cared for children? And how many of you have cared for friends or family that have been ill? And how many of you have received the care of others? Yeah. There are not many lives that are not touched by the need to care for others or to be cared for. Caregiving is the interdependence web of way of connecting all the threads in the system. And by your show of hands and your nods, I see that pretty well all of us here have experienced the caring of others or being cared for. And that's good. After the very first memorial I conducted as a lay chaplain for the Vancouver Unitarian Church about 35 or so years ago, I was standing at the door prepared to thank people for coming and to console them if it was asked for. The person who had died had been a homekeeper and a mother. She had served family, neighbors, and friends all her life. And as I stood at the door, a group of her neighbors stopped in front of me. I said, "I'm very sorry for your loss." And then, instead of moving on, they just waited. It was obvious to me that they were looking for me to say something more, something important. I certainly felt that moment as being powerful, pivotal. And I was a little panicked. I didn't know what to say. What could I say that would satisfy their need in that moment? So in my mind, I imagined the cul-de-sac in which they all lived. And in a flash of intuition, I had a sense of the community that they formed. And then I found myself saying, "Take care of each other. Take care of each other." It's so simple a statement. One that many of us say all the time, sort of as a throwaway at the end of a conversation. "Oh, take care of each other. Take care." But in this particular moment, standing in that doorway between the community they had known and the one they were hesitating to face without their friend, in that moment, to me it seemed like great wisdom, offered from the spirit of love and compassion in the world. I saw and felt those words land in their hearts with all the power of a prophetic call. Take care of each other. A simple, profound statement. And they were satisfied. And they turned and walked away together. It's a statement, an intention. It is a gift of immeasurable worth to be taken care of and to take care of. But it isn't as simple as it seems. Caring and being cared for requires strength of character, generosity, patience, tenacity, courage, resilience, forgiveness. It will challenge our comfort, our routines and habits. It may even challenge our idea of who we think we are. It is potentially a cauldron of transformation. It is a deeply spiritual practice. My parents lived into their late 80s together, over 50 years of marriage, over 50 years of figuring out the ups and downs of relationship, the complex dance of dependence and individuality, which gradually reveals the truth of our interdependence. They were opposites, my parents. One was outgoing, energetic, talkative, creative, impulsive. The other was quiet, introverted, gentle, patient, methodical. Very different people. The last few years were not easy. My mother herself, in her mid-80s, became my father's primary caregiver. She had always been the fiery one, the impulsive one, out in the world doing a lot. And he was the anchor, holding the home together, a place where she returned to rest and renew. When it became clear that my father needed 24/7 care, my mother put aside her outside life and focused on her husband. She called it her last important work. This had not been the way of their lives up until then. The work of caregiver wasn't a skill that she had used much in her life, having always been a community leader, not a nurturing householder. And yet, the decision was made, and she threw herself into it, mastering new cooking skills and medical skills, and applying a lifetime of managerial skills. And it was a significant challenge. And she had the determination to do it, and to do it well. She told me that every night, once all the medicines were given and the medical procedures had been accomplished, and they had settled into bed, the very last thing they did was to look over at each other and say, "I love you, thank you." And then they kissed goodnight. It was their new ritual for their new normal, because as she said, they didn't know if either of them would wake up in the morning. One day, though, it all changed. She, who was one of the strongest and most determined people I've ever known in my life, who had not found much in her life that she couldn't accomplish, found the limit of her strength and ability. I'm not sure she had said many times in her life, "I can't do this anymore." It was time to find new resources of caregiving, another new normal. I, their daughter, stepped in to help, and we found others too, professional caregivers. Professional caregivers for our children or for our parents is not a profession that has much respect in this society. The pay is minimal, and much of the work is invisible. And it's hard work, physically and emotionally demanding. It requires sensitivity and patience and creativity and endurance. And the best of those professional caregivers understand and respect the integrity of their charge. And the best of them do the jobs that need to be done with real care, with heart. The very best caregiver that my mom had all the qualities that I've mentioned, and one thing more. She cared for my mom with her full and undivided attention. She didn't rush. She didn't multitask. She wasn't sitting with my mom on the couch and texting on her phone. She was entirely present. Giving our undivided attention to another person is an important part of caregiving. Giving our undivided attention to others is a gift that everyone can give. It's a gift that obviously requires no money, so there's no inequality. It's a gift that requires no holiday season to be given. What would it mean to be radically counterculture today in a society where isolation and loneliness has become newsworthy? It might mean we don't rush around buying gifts for people whom we love and respect. It might mean slowing down the momentum of the season, putting on the kettle, sitting down as if you have nothing else in the world to do, but ask your friend, your daughter, your mother, your brother, "So tell me, how are you? How is your life?" Giving our undivided attention is also justice work. One piece of the justice work is asking yourself, who are the people that you are turning your attention away from? Is it one person or is it a group of people? And I understand here at North Shore that you have started doing the difficult work of looking at privilege So you may have already begun to notice that privilege allows us to not listen to some people and not turn our attention toward some people that might make us uncomfortable. This is important work you're doing. So I leave you with that question. Who do you withhold your undivided attention from? In this cataclysmic world we live in today, in this country and in other countries, where it seems the foundations of our liberal values are eroding, where the constant barrage of news tells us that hate is on the rise and not so natural disasters are wiping out communities and species, there are dozens of directions and dozens of causes that are calling for our attention. And I'm often asked, where do I start? How do I meet all these needs? How do I do all that needs to be done? And my answer is again simple. Choose one, and then give generously of your full and undivided attention. Simone Veil, the first president of the European Parliament and survivor of the Nazi concentration camps, who died last year at the age of 89, said, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." She lived through the atrocities of the Second World War, when hate spewed across the world, when it was common to die for what you believed in, as it is today in many places of the world. Out of that horrific time, she concluded that giving one's attention was both rare and the purest form of generosity. And perhaps that just seems so simple, maybe too simple. But remember the neighbors who had lost their friend. Take care of each other, was all I said. It might have been a prophetic call, a new way to consciously live together. And in this season of giving, I encourage you to be generous with your attention. It is the rarest and the greatest gift that we can give. And it can be a wild ride. It's potentially transformative. And it is deeply spiritual work. And I thank you for your attention this morning. Please remain standing for our sending forth of this flame. We extinguish this flame. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose. We go forth with courage and love. And these closing words, in this season of darkness, be the light the world needs. Gather up all that you have received here today, and as you move out into the world, share that light, that bounty, with all who cross your path. Please now let us form an unbroken circle by reaching out to those near you, connecting to a hand, an elbow, or shoulder if you have a cold, and let us sing our closing song.